Wait, forgot to unmute my microphone. Good afternoon, everyone, to day 11 of GSD with Tanwa. So this is the last day of this part one, which is how to improve your English for your academic careers, right? So first of all, thank all of you who have been joining me from the very start, and it's been a fantastic journey for me as well, teaching all of you some fun English stuff. So today we're gonna tie it off with this writing skills in standardized tests, right? So last week we talked about writing skills and how to improve your writing, whether it's about the fluidity of your writing, the precision of your writing, or the intonation of your writing. Okay. So today we're gonna see how we can apply that in a standardized test settings, right? So we're gonna touch everything. We're gonna touch the TOEIC writing test. We're gonna touch the TOEFL writing test, and we're gonna touch the IELTS writing test. All right. So yeah, let's start. Because why not? Boom. Okay. So let's start with this one. This is, oh, wait, by the way, I forgot. My apology. So if you want to follow along with the example on your own devices, you can use the links provided in the video description, whether it's YouTube or Facebook. Okay, so I have a few links for TOEIC, a few links for TOEFL, and a few links for IELTS. Okay, so you can follow along using the links provided. Cool. So let's start with the TOEIC. So we're going to skip the speaking section because we have talked about it. If you didn't get to listen to the speaking test tips and tricks, you can go to our YouTube channel and take a look at that. Now let's look at the writing test, right? The part that most of you are most afraid of, which I don't know why, because writing is fantastic. You have, first of all, number one tips for writing test is that don't psych yourself out, okay? Writing is not that scary. You don't have the pressure of having to listen to someone. Because when you listen to someone, it's a one-time thing, right? If I say something and you miss it, especially in a test, it will not be repeated, right? It will not be repeated at all. So I could understand if you stress out then. If you have to speak something, right? You have the urgency of having to produce something in real time. So I would understand if you feel stressed about that. But writing is totally different, right? Writing is you on your own time, right? So take as much time as you need. I have seen students who freak out before they take writing tests. I always tell them, like, calm down, right? Nobody is out to hurt you. Nobody is pressuring you into writing something. So if you feel like you are freaking the fuck out because you don't like doing writing, take a deep breath. Just go before you start doing something. You have all the time in the world, okay? So writing is amazing that way, and I think it's like a fantastic skill to develop as well. So the TOEIC writing test, you can see that you have 8 questions, but really only number 6, 7, and 8 should give you problems, okay? Let me say that again. You have 8 questions total, but only number 6, 7, and 8 should give you problem. If you have problems, if you have trouble finishing number 1 to 5, you have not practiced enough. Right? If you go to a TOEIC test and 1 to 5 are difficult for you, any one of them, you have not practiced enough. So go back home and practice again. Right? You should not be stressed by number 1 to 5. Okay? Why is that? Because, well, first of all, you have 60 minutes to do it. Right? 60 minutes is a goddamn, it's like a really long time to do some writing. But it's all right, all good. You have 60 minutes to do something. Number 1 and 5 should be pretty easy. So it gives you one picture, right? Based on a picture, one picture and 2 words. And then you have to use the words to form one sentence, right? One sentence in your answer. So really, it's like, look at a picture, read the words, and then compose a sentence. Should not be hard at all. And you can practice this until the end of the world. Like you can practice it on like thousands of pictures online. Okay. So this should, number 1 and 5, again, should be really, really easy for you. If you struggle with 1 through 5, you have not practiced enough. Okay. Number 6 to 7 is you're going to get an email, and then you have 10 minutes to write out to read and answer each of the email, right? So 6 and 7, that's about 20 minutes total, right? And then lastly, number 8 should be your hardest one, right? Number 8 give you an opinion essay, right? An opinion essay asks you for a response, and then you have to provide a 300 words essay to answer that prompt. Okay, so let's touch number 1 through 5 first, the picture one, right? So this is a sample test. provided by the Toeic people. They're wonderful, wonderful Toeic people. So number 1 and 5, it will give you a picture, and you have to write a sentence, right? One sentence. So one thing that you have to keep in mind for writing tasks is that whatever they ask, make sure you answer it, right? Whatever they ask, make sure you answer it the way they want you to. Do not write 2 sentences. Do not write an incomplete sentence. Write one full sentence, right? You'll be graded on grammar and the relevance of the sentences to the pictures. So the example they gave is this one, right? So notice that it said you have 5 pictures. You have 8 minutes to complete this part of the test. So each of the picture, you will only get about 1 minute, right? But seriously, you have to come up with one sentence. If you can't get one sentence a minute, I don't think you should pass the TOEIC. I'm sorry, right? All right, let me say that again. Let me just like zoom into my face. If you can't come up with one English sentence a minute, you probably should not pass a TOEIC. You have not practiced enough, right? So practice more. All right, go back to the example. So you see this picture, right? And then it's obviously is an airport, okay? And then you see the airport terminal. That's one of the required word. And the second one would be the word so, okay? And then you have to compose a sentence using these 2 words that is relevant to the picture. Make sense, right? So for this one, for example, you could say the airport terminal was not busy when I had to take my flight, so I took a taxi. Boom, done, right? Or I had to pick up my friends from the airport, so I drove to the airport. Boom, done, right? Might not be the best poetry, but it's relevant to the picture. One tricks that you can do is that I think here. So it said you can change the forms of the words, or you can use the words in any orders, right? So the word airport terminal is a noun, right? You really can't change it into something else. But let's say it gives you a word, let's say like swim, right? To swim. You can use the word to swim. You can use the word swam. You can use the word like have swum. You can use the word to swim, swimming, anything at all. Okay, so you can change the form of the words as long as it is the same word. Right? So that's number 1 through 5, like super simple, super easy. It should not take you longer than 5 minutes, right? They give you 8 minutes to do it because the extra 3 minutes is for you to freak the fuck out when you're like, oh my god, it's a written test. And then once you have calmed down using that 3 minutes, then you have about 5 minutes, like 1 minute per photo or per picture to complete it, right? So don't freak out too much because you're wasting your time. All right, so again, 1 through 5 are basically like this, so it should not give you any problem at all. 6 to 7 is also not that hard, right? It will give you this kind of short email kind of thing, right? And then it will ask you to respond to the email doing something, right? So in this email, it's a Dale City Welcome Committee, right? To new Dale City resident, welcome to your new home. And then it will be like, hey, welcome. We would like to be the first to welcome you to Dale City. We know that there are many things to do when you move, from finding your way around town to setting up your utilities. Please contact us if you need any help at all, right? So that would be the sort of email that you would get in your regular everyday life. Just kind of like, hey, welcome to the city. How can we help you? That's in America. In Thailand, you just kind of move somewhere and be like, oh my God, what the fuck am I going to do? Anyway, so in the email, it said respond to the email and respond as if you have recently moved to a new city. In your email to the committee, make at least 2 requests for information. Right? So this is what students typically do. They read the email, they read the directions, and then be like, oh my God, I have to write. So they start writing immediately, right? So writing is kind of like going to war in a little bit because you need to plan it out, right? If you remember when we talked about the listening test, right? I said, do not click the goddamn play button unless you have looked at the photo and have gotten all the information out of the photo. Same thing with writing, right? Do not start writing. I don't care how much time you have left. I don't care if you don't have enough time. You don't write until you know what to write, right? That sounds really simple, but it's something that students don't do, like some of you anyway. You're just like, oh my God, I have to write something. So you start writing, and it sounds like shit because you didn't plan your writing, okay? So if this was my test, I would have been like, okay, so obviously the email is super generic. It's just like, hey, welcome. How can we help you, right? So you can plan it out. You can say they want me to make 2 requests. So just look at the email and be like, hey, what kind of request can I make, right? They usually give you hints. That's the nice things about standardized writing tests, right? They already gave you hints, right? For example, you might not know how to find your way around town. Or 2, you're not sure how to set up your utilities, right? So boom, 2 requests. You don't even have to think, right? You just have to stop freaking the fuck out and just plan out your writing, right? So if this was my test, I would have said to Dale City Welcome Committee. My name is Tanwa. I just moved to this city 2 weeks ago. I clearly don't know my way around town, so I would be happy if you can recommend me some nice restaurants in downtown. That's the first request. And then I say, also, I still need help setting up my utilities, specifically my internet. If you can provide me the contact information to the internet service provider, I would be grateful. Thank you. Tanwa. Boom, done. Right? That took me like what? A minute, right? Now you can write it out, right? Or you can write it out as you like speak out your answer, right? So as you can see, this email thing is not too bad at all because usually the email already gives you hints on what to do, right? So it's not bad. You notice what I did just now, though, right? If that was my test, I would have been typing out that answer as I was saying it to myself, right? And as we talked about the last time, right, you should read out loud what you write. Because if you have exposed yourself to enough English, at this point, by the time you get to like test taking, you should have absorbed some intonation in the way people speak or the way people write, right? By reading a lot, by listening a lot, by speaking a lot, or writing a lot, or whatever, right? As you speak out your answer, you will know if you're about to make grammatical errors, right? So that would be my recommendation. As you type it out, do not be, just speak it out, right? Just type it out and speak it out at the same time is my recommendation. All right, so that's the email. So number 8, which is your hardest one, right? This, they will give you a prompt, right? Directions, and it will ask you some opinions on something. This is the longest one because you will need 30 minutes to see. They use the word plan, right? You will need 30 minutes to plan, and then write, and then revise. Right? That's the typical flow of a writing task. Do not start writing until you have planned out what you're going to write, okay? And then write it out and then edit it for grammar and coherence and whatever. The typical format of this kind of essay is this. You have the introduction, and then you have the body, and then the ending of the essay, right? So at the minimum, right, you should have 3 paragraphs. Right? This is not, again, standardized tests are stupid. This is not how you communicate in English. But you have to be tested on something. So they came up with this stupidest shit. Okay. So I said like the 3 paragraphs structure because that's the easiest way for you to pass the test, right? If you are an advanced writer, what the hell are you doing here? You already passed the test. Don't listen to me, right? But if you haven't passed the test, a 3-paragraph structure is the easiest way to structure your essay. All right. So how does that go, right? Let's start with the question. So the question is this one. It said there are many ways to find a job: newspaper advertisement, internet job search websites, and personal recommendations. What do you think is the best way to find a job? Give reason or example to support your opinion, right? Give reason or example to support your opinion. So it's typically something like this. It's typically like they will give you choices to pick from, right? And in a normal conversation, right, if this was not a test, if this was like a conversation between friends, my answer would be, well, every method has like strengths and weaknesses. Maybe sometimes you want to use newspaper, maybe sometimes you want to use the internet, but maybe also sometimes you want to use personal recommendations because, you know, they are different and they have pros and cons. Don't ever do that in a test. Do not do that in a test, right? I don't care what you think. I don't care what your true opinion is. If they give you choices for you to discuss, pick one, right? Pick one and pretend that that is the best option. Do not be a smart ass and try to like, I will compare the pros and cons of all the methods. No, pick one. So if this was my test, even though I know that anyone who's looking for a job should probably use everything. If you don't have a job, use everything. Whatever the hell will give you a job, right? But if this was my test, I would have picked one. Let's say I pick personal recommendations, right? I want my friend to help me find a job, right? I want my friend to help me find a job. So how would that work on a 3-paragraph essay structure, right? So like I said, you have the beginning, the middle, and the end, or the introduction, the body, and the conclusion, right? So in the introduction, I would say, well, why do I want to pick personal recommendations over the other options, right? So for example, in the introduction, so this is the planning part, right? I am planning it out. I'm going to answer with personal recommendation. So in my introduction, usually the 3-paragraph essay structure go like, the introduction state your answer, right? You would say, this is what I pick. Right? And then in the second paragraph, you would provide evidence to support whatever the hell you pick in the first paragraph. Right? And then in the third paragraph, you would say something along the line of, in conclusion, this is why I think, you know, the answer that I picked is the best out of all 3. Right? So let's play this out. If I had to answer this writing test, I would say in the introduction, something along the line of, whereas different methods of finding a job have different strengths and weaknesses, finding a job through personal recommendations is probably the best way for someone to find a job that is suitable for his or her personality. Boom. First paragraph, right? Boom. Right. Let me say that again. So first paragraph would go something along the line of, different methods of job finding have different strengths and weaknesses, but personal recommendations is the best way for someone to find a job that fit his or her personalities, right? So notice that I made a claim, right? I provided an answer, but I haven't supported it, right? I haven't said why. So that's the second paragraph, right? So in the second paragraph, I would say something along the line of, using a personal recommendations, the person who refers me to the job probably already know what the job feels like, because my friend or whatever, my family member, is probably already employed there. One, right? And then two, since the referrer to the job, so my friend and my family member or whatever, is referring me into a job, that means that my friend already has a connection with the employer, which means I might have more chance of getting a job. And then third evidence would be, and since I already know someone in the job, I can ask that someone to see if the job would fit me as a person, right? And he or she can give me recommendations, right? So yeah, so that would be the body of the paragraph. And then in the conclusion, right, you would take the introduction and your evidence from the second paragraph and just conclude it. Just say what you just said, right? So in the third paragraph, you would say, hey, whereas different methods have different strengths and weaknesses, only personal recommendations allow the person finding a job to know beforehand whether the job would fit his or her personalities or not, because of personal connection, because of a chance to interview current employee, and also because the referrer probably know your personality. Done with that shit. So that's planning, and then you just write the shit out, right? So in the planning section, you can also make a note, right, as like bullet point items on your writing test, so you don't forget it when you have to write it. And then you just go back to your bullet points and just expand it into actual sentences. So that would be the easiest way to approach writing an essay, right? Again, this is the most boring ass way to write an essay ever. And I will never, ever, ever, ever do this in real life because it's bland as shit, right? It's the most boring kind of things that you can do. If we are talking about ice cream, this would be like, if we talk about food, this would be like bacon, right? This would be like something so boring that anyone can make to taste good, right? So you will never do this in real life, but if you're doing it for a test, it's the easiest way to pass a test without too much problem. Okay, let's see how they're gonna grade you, right? And you will see why I stress so much about all the like precision and fluidity and whatnot that we talked about before. So this is the TOEIC writing proficiency level descriptors. Holy shit, long name, bad color. First of all, you will see that so this is like, okay, you can communicate effectively, you can use reason, you can use example, you can explain. So that's not even like English, right? That's just like, can you write? Can you make a statement coherently about something? Can you write in a well thought out and well developed manner, right? That's not an English skill, that's a writing skill, right? If you have problem with these parts of the grading scheme, you don't have problem in English, you have problem in writing. Practice more writing, right? But this part though is interesting, right? It said the use of English is natural with a variety of sentence structures and appropriate word choice, and is grammatically accurate, okay? And if you go back to last week, we talked about this. We talked about the use of natural English, right? So again, avoid using big words, because big words will make your writing sound robotic, because you don't normally use big words in your sentence. Unless you mean, then you can use big words in your sentence because you use it all the time, right? So that's number one. Don't use the words that you don't normally use. And then number two, a variety of sentence structures, right? Again, as a reminder, this is your sentence length, basically. Don't say, I like personal recommendations. I think personal recommendations better. I think my friends can help me find a job, right? That would be the same kind of sentence structure. You don't want to do that. You want to vary the sentence structure, right? You would say something along the line of, out of all the choices, I prefer personal recommendations in finding a job. Personal recommendations allow the referrer to know my personality ahead of time and match my personality with my job. In my opinion, personal recommendation is the best. Right? So I started with like a mid-size sentence, and then I go to like a really long sentence, and then a short sentence. Right? And that's the same way we speak too. Like you don't go like I go to market, I buy watermelon, I take watermelon home, I drive home, I get home. You don't do that when you speak, right? You would say, today I went to the market. I really wanted a watermelon, so I bought some. I took them home in my car. Once I got home, I put them in the kitchen cabinet, right? So you see that you have a variety of sentence structure when you speak as well. So do that, except do that in writing. Right? Which is why I always suggest that when you write something, just read it out, because your writing and your speaking should sound the same, except you can think about it more when you write. Okay, and here is the part that I say the writing is clear, coherent, and effective. Right. This is why I suggest that you only pick one options out of all the options that they give you, regardless of how intelligent you are, because it's so much easier for you to have a strong opinion about something and be clear about it. Right? If you go like, oh, I think all the methods are good because 1, 2, 3, 4, then unless you're really good at writing, it's gonna be less coherent. It's gonna go into like incoherent zone very quickly. Right? I'm not saying this is the way to write everything. This is the way to write to pass the goddamn test, right? Not the way to write effectively in real life. All right, so that's the TOEIC. If you have any questions, just feel free to type it out in the comment section. Let's see the TOEFL. The TOEFL, you have two kind of tasks, right? So the TOEFL is typically longer and more difficult because it's academic English. You have two tasks though, only just two tasks. You have the integrated writing task, which is when you listen to a short lecture and then write a response to it. And then you have the independent writing task, which is when they again ask you for an opinion and then you just answer it, right? So I would rather not go through like what it is. You can click on the link and just go look at it. But I would not even turn on the sound for this video. But it's basically, they will give you a passage, like for question number 1 in TOEFL. They will give you a passage and then they will make you listen to some lecture about the same thing. And then they will ask you some question about it, right? For example, like, where is it? Yeah. So it basically asks you, hey, if you can see the screen, it's basically asks you, hey, what's the point being made in the lecture, right? So basically, hey, you have read something, you have listened something. What was it about, right? So this is just summarizing whatever you hear, right? This is pretty easier, relatively easier. I wouldn't say pretty easy, but relatively easier compared to having to write your own shit, right? So again, plan it out, right? Anytime you hear a main topic about something, right, make a note, make a bullet item, right? And then once you're done with everything, you can expand the bullet items into a full-fledged writing piece. Okay. The second one is more interesting though. This is the independent task, right? So the independent task is basically the same as the TOEIC. It will give you some statement, and then you have to say whether you agree or disagree with it. For example, this one says a teacher's ability to relate well with students is more important than excellent knowledge of the subject being taught. Right. So that's one of the example. Right. A teacher's ability to relate well with students is more important than excellent knowledge of the subject being taught. Right. And then if we ask you, hey, write an essay. So it's the same as the TOEIC, except the topic might be a little harder because it's the TOEFL. Again, the same advices apply here. Do not go, oh, I think both are important. I think both the knowledge and both relationships with students are important. Pick one. Why? Because they're not grading you on your opinions, right? They're grading you on your English. Even if you pick the wrong opinion, they still can't take points off because they are only allowed to grade you on your English. Even if the question is something ridiculous like, what do you think of the following statement? Climate change is bullshit, right? Even if you write an essay, well, of course, climate change is real, right? Before you come hunt me out. But even if you write an essay like introduction, I think climate change is bullshit because the Earth is warmer every year, and that's a natural process. And then in the body section, you like here are all the evidence why the Earth is naturally warmer every year, regardless of the climate change. And then the third conclusion part, you just say, hey, climate change is therefore bullshit. If you write that out excellently, you will get perfect score, even though the opinion is just kind of shit, right? Because they can't take points off for your opinion, they can only take points off for bad writing, right? So pick an option and go with it, right? And the TOEFL reflects what I have always said about all the standardized tests. I don't care which one you're taking, you're going to prepare it the same way. I don't care if you're taking the TOEFL. I don't care if you're taking the TOEIC. I don't care if you're taking the IELTS. They are all the fucking same. Okay? It's just how hard you want to work. If you can't find a TOEFL preparation book, well, get a TOEIC preparation book. Do something. Because they are all the same. They are literally all the same. Maybe the TOEFL is a little bit harder, but the format might change a little bit, but it's still the same skills that are being measured, right? So that's why when I was asked to teach this course, and it was like geared toward like, so the people who asked me said like, geared more toward the TOEIC. I was like, no, they're all the same. Like they literally are all the same. They have no creativity, right? So if you train for one, you train for all. You practice for one, you practice for all. I guarantee you will pass if you practice enough because they are all the fucking same. Gratuitous cursing today because it's my last day here. What are they gonna do? Fire me from my live stream? Fuck that shit. So let's see how they're grading you. So they're grading you on, I think yeah, whatever. So they're grading you on a scale of 1 to 5, and you can see that. Oh, I'm not sharing the screen. You can see that they are basically grading you on the same thing, right? So again, these first three parts is just how good you are at writing something, right? If you can't effectively address the topic, or like you can't organize your thought well, or develop your thought into appropriate explanation, then you don't have problem in English, you have problem with writing. And only practice and practice and more practice will fix that. Okay. The last one is about English, like display consistent facility in the use of language, demonstrating syntactic variety. Right? That's just a fancy ass word of saying, hey, change your sentence length. Syntactic variety, right? So this is a very good example of using big words, right? If you are the kind of person that use big words all the time and you say syntactic variety, then that's fine. That sounds natural. But if you have never used it and you try to fit it in your writing, it just sounds kind of weird, right? But that just means changing sentence length and structure, right? Use the word well, make sure it's idiomatic, and you can have minor lexical grammatical errors, right? You can have minor errors and still getting full score. So that is the TOEFL. Let's see the IELTS, because IELTS is always fun. Not. All right. So the IELTS, I'm not sure if you're taking the general training or the academic one, but the academic one's typically harder, so I would just do that one, right? So in the IELTS section, you have, in the IELTS test, you have 60 minutes as well. And you have only two tasks, right? Two tasks. The first one, you will have a graph, a table, a chart, a diagram that you will describe, summarize, or explain, right? I'll show you some example in a little bit. And then on the second one, hey, look, you're writing an essay about what? About your point of view, argument, or problem. Same shit. Like I said, I don't care if you're practicing for TOEFL, TOEIC, or IELTS. They are all the same. All right. So let's give you some example of the writing task. So for example, on an IELTS, you could see something like this, right? So the chart below shows the number of men and women in further education in Britain in 3 periods and whether they were studying full-time or part-time. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. So only 150 words. So that's basically one paragraph, right? So you see that they give you the chart and you see the year, right? 70 to 71, 80 to 81, 90 to 91. And then you see it's separated into male, which is the first 3 bars, and then females, which is the last 3 bars. And then you have the full-time people and then part-time people. Okay? And then you have the number of students in thousands in further education, right? So it's almost the same as the TOEIC picture test, except it's like a graph and table, and then you write along with things, right? Make sure you answer what they're suggesting, though. If you, for example, make comparisons where relevant, right? Anytime they suggest you do something, you better do it. So for this thing, obviously, you can compare between male and female, or for example, you could say, hey, the number of part-time male students do not change significantly between 1970 to 1990, but the number of part-time female students steadily increased from 600,000 students in 1970 to about 1,100 students in the 1990s. Right? You have compare and contrast. You have compared the male with the female, and then you have compared across time. Right? That's about 50 words right there. So you just add like 2 or 3 more things. Like for example, the number of full-time students are always less than the number of part-time students in both male and females. That's another 20 words, right? So that is that, right? Just describe what you see, basically. Okay, and writing task number 2 is again an essay. So for this one, it said, the first car appeared on British roads in 1888. By the year 2000, there may be as many as 29 million vehicles on British roads. Alternative forms of transport should be encouraged and international laws introduced to control car ownership and use. To what extent do you agree or disagree, right? So they just ask you, hey, yeah, should we have more public transportation or should we have more laws to control car ownership? You could say yes or no, right? It doesn't have to be one. I would say, so the actual correct answer would be, it depends. Right? If you're being scientific about it, you'd be like, oh, it depends on a lot of factors. Don't do that. Just go like, yes, I think more laws and regulations are needed. Or like, no, more laws and regulations are not needed. And then here's why, right? So paragraph 1 would be like yes or no. And then paragraph 2 would be like, here's why I think it's yes or no. And then 3 would be like, hey, let me summarize what I just said. Right? So again, pick one option and go with it. Let's see the grading scheme though, which I find quite interesting. So the grading schemes is actually categorized into many things. But again, the first 2 columns, you have task achievement and coherence and cohesion. Right? Again, these 2 are writing skills, right? It's not testing your English. It's just testing your writing skill. And then the third and the fourth one is actually the English part. So use a wide range of vocabulary with very natural and sophisticated control of lexical features. Right? So basically use the words that you know Use the words that you know, right? Don't try to be a fancy ass about it because you will make errors. Right? Don't use the words you don't know. And then lastly, it said use a wide range of structures with full flexibility and accuracy. Right? Use a wide range of structures is the same as changing your sentence length, right? Changing your sentence length, changing the subject of your sentence. Do not start all the sentences with like I think, I agree, I opine that something something, right? Just change the way you say things, and should be good to go, right? So that's the IELTS, and task number 2 is about the same, right? So task response and coherence, test your writing skills, and then your English skills are being graded on the lexical and the grammatical range and accuracy. All right, so that's the TOEFL, the TOEIC, and the IELTS in 4 skills like listening, reading, writing, speaking. So at this point, this is the end of part 1 of GSD, but do not leave yet because I'm about to yell at you some more. Like I said from the very beginning of this part 1, right? If your goal of learning English is to pass standardized tests, go do practice tests. Do hundreds of them. Do 50 of them. Do hundreds of them. Do 200 of them. You will pass. I guarantee. You will pass if that's all you need. Right? But don't learn English because you want to pass a goddamn test. Like, as we said before in day 1 or day 2, I don't remember, knowing more languages allow you to think better. And being able to think better will make you more well-rounded. It will make you like achieve things in life that you couldn't with just one language. I guarantee you, right? So don't aim to pass the test. If that's your goal, that's fine. Like we don't have to agree. Just go do practice tests. But if your goal is actually to be a better person, don't learn English to pass tests. Learn English to be a better person, right? And learn how to write an essay that does not have just 3 paragraphs. Learn how to write an essay that is actually like fantastically interesting, right? Go look at like speeches throughout the years in the history of the world that is like fucking fantastic and inspiring, like Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech or something, right? So aim to be better at English, not to pass tests. But if you want to pass tests, well, I provided you enough tips for you to do the practice test and probably pass it, right? So that's the conclusion of part 1 of GSD with Tanwa. Let's get shit done. Part 2, which is after the summer break. So for those of you who watch this in the future, I don't know why the fuck you here because I don't know, maybe you like being yelled at by me, but if you hear from like future watching, it's May right now, so we're gonna take about a few months break for the summer session, and then we're gonna come back during probably August, and then start with part 2 of GSD getting shit done with Tanwa. In part 2, we're gonna talk about how to write your thesis and paper, right? The tools and the thinking method and the structure that you could bring into writing your thesis and your paper. But in order to get to part 2 and make the most out of part 2, you have to have gone through part 1, right? So whatever the hell I have been saying for the last 11, 12 weeks, right? You need to know when I talk about precision of writing, you need when I talk about fluidity of writing, when I talk about intonation of writing, you need to know what that means, right? So if you already forgot about it, we'll go back 1 week and watch it, or in fact, go back to day 1 and watch it all over again before you start part 2, right? Once we get on part 2, then we're gonna try to apply the English skills that you have hopefully improved over the summer into writing a better thesis and paper for your graduation. All right. So with that said, thank you all for joining me for this last day of part 1 of GSD with Tanwa. Hopefully I will see you again in part 2. If I don't see you during the summer break, we'll have a wonderful, fantastic summer break. If I do see you around campus, well, come say hi in English, and I'll talk to you. All right. So have a good summer break. I will see you next semester.